So the next session is called Operationalizing Inclusion. This session came about back in June. I wrote a piece called Rethinking Allyship in Ad Tech for our weekly newsletter called The Wrapper. And then someone brought to our attention that there were some folks who were talking about and thinking about how to make changes within their organization. And so when I heard about these two ladies who were making changes within their organization, both culturally and structurally, I wanted to have a conversation with them here at Publisher Forum Virtual. So I want to welcome those ladies to you. We have Melissa Bonnick, who is the SVP of Client Results at Dentsu Aegis Network. And we have Rachael McCombs, who's the Senior Director. Did I pronounce your last name correctly, Rachael?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Senior Director, Ad and Media Operations at Digital Trends. Welcome, ladies, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so I just wanted to start off with a comment from that piece I wrote in The Wrapper. And one thing I said at the end of the piece is that, believe it or not, dismantling and rebuilding unjust systems from the ground up is how true advocacy works, right? People often talk about bolting things on, but I know it's about shaking it up, right? You have to shake it up and change it. So first, in the time that we have, I first want people to get to know a little bit more about you guys, and then we'll dive into this conversation about how you're affecting change within your own organizations. So Melissa, first, can you talk a little bit about how you got into ad ops, programmatic? You've been kind of all over the place.
A little bit, yeah. So for me, I started out an internship that I thought was just regular in marketing, and it turned out to be in digital ads. The head of ad ops got really pissed off one day, threw his phone on the ground and walked out the door. The head of the ad network that I was working at looked at me and said, "Do you want to learn ad ops?" And I said, "Sure." He handed me the manual. I spent the next 6 months on the phone with our ad server rep, and I have not turned back except to switch over to programmatic. Along the way, it has been amazing, diverse-ish, but there are those times where I walk into a room and I am the only person of color there, or I meet a vendor and that vendor says, "You're nothing like what I thought you were when I spoke to you on the phone," which then goes, well, what could be different? So for me, it's been a long road. God, I think it's been 15 years at this point, but it's been, it's been interesting to watch the change.
Okay, and Rachael, as for you, how did you get into this field?
Quite by accident, actually. I was actually working in sales operations for a newspaper.com company. And, it was right when digital and RTB was becoming a thing that the sales team need to worry about. And there was just nothing in place for them to connect the dots between print and digital. So the sales organization basically implanted me in ad ops to learn everything that was going on in ad ops in order to connect the dots and make it a more seamless integration across the board, is because they needed to quickly move there. And I loved it so much that I stayed there. I actually abandoned ship on sales and went over to ad ops, and because I just love it so much, and I have never looked back.
Okay, Melissa, you brought up a very interesting point. You talked about diversity within ad ops and somewhat in programmatic. That, these are usually diverse groups of people. They come from all different kinds of backgrounds, both culturally as well as skills, range of backgrounds, college majors, and so on. We often talk about that dynamic between the front office and the back office and how that kind of reflects society, right?
Yep.
Right. So can you guys talk a little bit about that, about the that dynamic between the front office and the back office, the dynamic, and how maybe that is reflective of how things work culturally within society.
Yeah, so at the risk of being a little too honest, yes, it is definitely a lot like that. At the end of the day, we are the cooks in the kitchen. We are the people setting the trends. We are the ones throwing up the alarm 6 months before everyone else to say, hey, as a heads up, this plan is not going to work, right, Rachael? You're not going to make a margin on this, you know.
So, guys.
Exactly. So it's interesting in the sense of we are the ones in the room. Just because we don't want to be front facing doesn't mean that we either can't be or that we're not intelligent. That is definitely not the case. We're in the back. We're handling all of making sure things deliver. They deliver well, that we're doing the optimizations needed so that at the end of the day, these people can walk back in that room and get additional dollars, make sure that we're continuing to get dollars. But a lot of that, it's like cultural appropriation, but for ad tech.
Okay, all right.
So if I come in with my fro, it's not okay. But tomorrow, other people may come in with a fro, and it's totally fine.
Got you. Rachael, what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see the parallels, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, oh, you're so great with the client. Well, of course I'm great with the client. Why wouldn't I be great with the client? This is a business and I'm a professional, you know what I mean? But it definitely, there is that kind of like bias unconsciously that they don't really, or just sometimes aren't aware of. And so they say things like that sometimes and you're like, okay, but yeah. I don't know why you would think anything different.
Yep. And I see Carrie in the chat is saying that too, that programmatic is becoming front office. And that's the reason why it's programmatic. I was like, I don't want to be back office anymore. I want to prove that I can be client facing as well.
Yep.
Right. It's in terms of being client facing. So Rachael, here's the moment of truth for you. All right. Digital trends. When we think of digital trends in 2020, everyone's seen the articles about the white bro culture and the cultural appropriation that Melissa is talking about. You know, we're not going to name names and go all into the details of that, but it's, you know, you're here on this in this conversation because obviously digital trends is doing something to change all of this. Can you talk about how you're involved in some of those changes and what some of those changes are? Yeah,
absolutely. That was a very...
Oh, and I forgot to say that Black Twitter dragged digital trends all up and down the feeds. Oh, right?
Yes, that did happen. That was very real. I will say the way that digital trends and how we handle it with accountability and action, right? I didn't mince any words in terms of sharing how I felt about that situation, how it saddened me, and also just how we just have to do better. So what was encouraging, though, was how quickly our organization responded. I like to say that for me, it felt like everything came to a standstill. Everything stopped, and that became the central focus of how did we get here, and what are we going to do to be better? And that was at the highest levels of the organization, at the executive level, that proactive outreach from them to kind of understand and create awareness within themselves, because they are the lifeblood of the organization. So to really see that, then reach out to get information, and to do that was really encouraging for me, because anytime people seek out information that they need to become better and more aware for better humans and are ready to do that work, that's exactly what I want to see. That's that accountability part. And then the actions that follow up with it. So from my perspective, I've been watching that change really happen in real time. So quickly formulating a plan, doing so with the input of minorities like myself and others, you know, making sure that we have minority representation at the executive level, so at the board level, and doing that relatively quickly, putting out a policy on bullying and zero tolerance, because we know as minorities, we tend to suffer quite a bit from bullying. And sometimes that is missed on folks because they're just not in tune to it. So the fact that they put a policy about that in place relatively quickly was really encouraging for me and showed me that there is a genuine desire to be better, deep reflection and accountability, and then the action to support it. And it's like ongoing. It wasn't like there was a response and then that was lip service and you just fade into the dark, right? It's been an ongoing thing. It's like something that is now an intrinsic part of the organization. And that's what I care about. So That's why I stayed, because if I hadn't seen that level of action, I don't know, right? I mean, we all have opportunities and choices, but the fact that I was able to stay and be a part of that gives me hope.
That's cool. I mean, we hear a lot of organizations now doing lip service to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Talking about they're doing it, but not actually putting any actions in place. Right. So it's very refreshing to hear that. Melissa, from your angle, I know there's a lot that you guys are doing to tackle unconscious bias in hiring, or should we say, in profiling, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So we've worked on a few different things. I know a lot of folks have talked about removing names from resumes. That's something that we are definitely going to be doing. Being able to make sure that we are looking at hires from the HBCUs or pulling in folks who we have either mentored or making sure that we're focusing on hiring from the internship class as well. Looking at our mix and having the conversation to say, are we diverse enough? Do we have room to do so? Are there still biases that are being created? So I don't think this is a one-step process. I think what is going to happen is we are going to take these steps to start, and then we're going to iterate on it. We're going to check in. We're going to make sure that are the people who are in place feeling as though we are doing our due diligence. Check in with those diverse folks, check in with the POCs, check in with the BIPOCs to say, do you feel as though we're doing enough? Because if at the end of the day, I don't feel like we're doing enough, Rachael doesn't feel like she's doing enough they're doing enough at their org, then you're not doing enough.
Right. I mean, like you guys, I have recently been named a co-chair of our parent company, Access Intelligence's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So, we're doing the same thing. We're just now trying to figure out what we need to do, right, internally, and how we need to make change. I think, though, the thing that becomes tricky for us is it our responsibility to school folks, right? Often some people will say, no, I'm tired of telling people how they should not be racist, right? What do you guys think about this?
I'm on the fence about it. There are days where I am more than happy to say, this is what you should go and do. But there are other days where it's exhausting. I mean, I feel like that's about to spin up again with what has transpired earlier this week. I feel like part of me hopes that it fosters that conversation again, but part of me is tired and exhausted. At the end of the day, it is not my responsibility to constantly bang my fist on the table to say, this is not fair, this is not right. At some point, if you, as a non-BIPOC, think that it's unfair, then say something. Because we have years worth of people not saying anything when we're in the room, where I've had situations where someone has, and this is going to be transparent again, someone has said the N-word in front of me, and I did not. It's not my responsibility to say, hey, that's not okay.
Right.
Right. Rachael, what do you say to that?
I agree completely. And I actually feel like I have a responsibility because I'm like so tired, like everyone else, and sad. But I actually volunteered to be a part of our kind of initiative that we're doing because to me, it's too important. Diversity and inclusion is too important, and I'm exhausted. like Melissa just said, it really is not my responsibility to tell you to be like a good person, and like that's not right. That said, this, like I said, is too important, and so I need to know that the change is actually going to happen. So I need to be a part of it. I need to be at the table. I need to have a seat front and center. I need to be leaning in and listening, informing, advising, advocating for myself and for others like me who may not feel like they have a voice. If I get an opportunity to speak, and if I get an opportunity to be present in a place where I can make change or be a part of change, then I need to be there. So I'm not going to leave that to chance. I'm not going to miss out on that opportunity, and I'm going to be there because it's just too important not to be. And as we go through that, having allies with us, I'm looking for transformation allies, transformative allyship. I'm looking for people who are actually willing to speak up and say something in real time, not just me, because if I say it, I'm angry, I'm aggressive, I'm intimidating, it's no, like, I really want you to be a real ally. And if we're going to be at this table together, I'm going to take my seat and I'm going to do my part, and I need you to do yours.
Right. What does that mean, a seat at the table, especially when we're talking about leadership roles? Like, what does representation mean to you guys? And I know, Rachael, you've talked about this a lot, about representation.
I mean, it's having just, and I mean, obviously, like people that look like us, but other people too, like other diversity, other groups of minorities and marginalized people that would not otherwise be represented, because that's super important to have those ideas, that spectrum, if you will, of people and experiences and socioeconomic background and all of those things, right? Because when we're at the table, we bring innovation, we bring new ideas, we bring creativity, not just us, but all of us together melding and talking and being a part of something. And I think that's when I say, having a seat at the table, that's what I mean. I don't mean I'm specifically the voice. I mean, collectively, we are the voices. And as a result, we are going to produce something really great.
Right. Did Melissa, your thoughts on that the same or a little different?
My thoughts are the same with a slight tweak to it. I want to have a seat. We want to have a seat at the table, but it needs to be a heard seat at the table. Do not give a board seat to someone and you aren't actually going to listen to their opinions. Do not add someone to your executive or your leadership team if you're just doing it as performative. Because at the end of the day, performative is not enough. We are not okay with that. What we want is for you to hear that the algos don't work. The performance reviews don't work. Your hiring practices do not work. More than happy to offer suggestions on how that needs to be done, but then take it.
Yeah, right. And I don't want to be a token or fetishized either, right? I mean,
exactly.
Right. I had one more question because we have like a minute left. Someone asked about whether we feel, what was that question? Carrie Brown, who works with me, my coworker, she asked, does the panel feel calling in is more effective than calling out?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Here's my thoughts on that. I think being approachable on this topic is important because you definitely want to call it out and you want to take opportunities to call that out, but it needs to be done so in a way like this. This is an uncomfortable topic and this is uncomfortable for everybody. But the outcome we're looking for is for change. So the way that happens, and sometimes it has to be very just directly and just like a direct call out, but more times than not, it's going to be a conversation. And it's going to be a conversation where you have to be approachable in the way that you, reach out to someone, but then when they're reaching out to you, approachable in receiving that information and how you deal with them and with empathy and things like that, kindness, etc. Because at the end of the day, I think people are inherently good and they want to do better. But a lot of them just don't have the information. And so they do things without really understanding what the consequences are. And for us, as a woman of color specifically, I think it's been better for me when I approach that with delicacy, if you will, instead of anger. Because I feel the anger. I just transform it into something else that's going to be productive, because that's what needs to happen in that moment to make sure that I actually get the outcome I'm looking for.
Right, right.
I
So,
agree.
okay, so what we have here, we have, don't just provide lip service and be performative, take action, right? And that means within the organization, we are training people, we are changing the way our hiring, recruitment practices work, right? Also retention, we didn't talk about that. But training, I know we need to train non-BIPOC folks, but what about BIPOC folks themselves?
I think mentorship is more important.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have someone, and it's not to say that I haven't had BIPOC mentorship, but I would have loved to have been able to really sit behind a Black woman when I first started. And that is one of the things that I want to make it a goal for. I would love to hide out, but I can't. So instead, I want to make it a goal that anyone who works for me, works with me, that if they have those hard times and those hard questions, and I hope that that's the case, that they feel comfortable texting me, that they feel comfortable calling me and saying, I don't know what to do here. I really just want to be that angry Black woman in the room and say that everyone is stupid, but I can't. So I think being able, I wish I had that, but mentorship is definitely the most important thing. And hopefully I can do it.
Yeah, mentorship, I think, is key. I have not had mentors that look like me ever. So, but I've had some nice white males help me throughout, my career, right?
Yeah.
All right, ladies, it's been wonderful. I wish we could chat longer, but we have to move along in the program. I'm sure people will be reaching out to you to ask you questions about how you are affecting change within your organizations. Thank you again.